Hey, what's going on, folks? It's Mike here, and today I'm going to be talking about an essential skill when you're building a software project, especially if you are one of the maintainers or leaders of a project. That's the documentation. So how do we generate good software documentation? Well, the good news is there's lots of examples to get inspired from, and there are some helpful tools like Doxygen, which we're going to talk about in today's video, to help us generate source code documentation. So anyways, let's go ahead and look at a project here. This is the object-oriented graphics framework called Ogre. And I'm just picking on this one because I thought it was a quite nice sort of bar for documentation, meaning that if you go to the API reference here, you'll get a nice page here. There's links to tutorials. You can go to different topics here and see the different systems, the different classes that are found here. And oftentimes, if you're just searching through a code base, your friends are a tool like grep for searching on the command line, or using documentation in HTML pages like this just to search, literally with a search bar as well. So anyways, what's really nice is you can get views of the different namespaces, the different classes. You can see where they're included. And the documentation I'm going to show you today will show you how to actually dive into the source. Now, this particular project is C++. That doesn't matter. I'm going to run it on a D code project that I have just because, well, that's what was open right now, and it'll give you an idea of what you can do and that you can use these different techniques on different programming languages. So anyways, with that said, that's sort of an example here. And let's take a look at Doxygen, which is the documentation code generator that we're going to be looking at today. There are some other flavors of Doxygen as well. I believe there's one called DoxyPress, but there's a new release of Doxygen. So again, that's what had this top of mind. And well, I was generating some documentation. So anyways, it is a code generator. It takes your or code documentation generator rather, that takes your source code as input and will generate a documentation page here. So you can look through the features. Again, it originally, I believe, started off as sort of like C++ as the primary language. I'm going to show in the D language today just because that'll give you a different view. I don't have to configure anything differently, but it supports a wide variety of languages. So if we go into the docs here, we could go ahead and see and kind of just follow along here. I'll show you how to do the installation in a moment here, but as far as the getting started here and features, well, you can get an idea of what the framework is. But basically, we're going to generate a configuration file, configure it, and it'll be as simple as that for generating documentation. So again, you can follow the installation instructions. I am on Linux today, so it is going to be as simple as sudo apt install Doxygen. You can do that, or of course, so I already have it. Looks like I have version 1.9. You can follow along the installation on Unix, of course, on Windows as well here. There are binaries available. And I believe you could also probably find or maybe install on Mac with an installer. I'll just go back to the documentation page here. Again, just go to download here. And then you will see here, Linux, Windows, or Mac, and again, have those available. So it's as simple as that. And with that said, let's go ahead and get configured with Doxygen here. And actually, let me leave the documentation up for us so we can search that. But let's close this down. And basically, I have a little project here. It doesn't matter so much what the project is, other than I have a bunch of source files. Again, I'm going to show you in .d. .d files are recommended, .c files, .h, .cpp. So if you're using one of the supported languages by Doxygen, which is, again, C, C++, D, Pascal, there's a bunch, for instance, of the main languages that are supported and extensions to other ones as well. But basically, that's what we need for our input. So what we're going to do here is, again, just to give you an idea of the layout of my project here, we're going to generate a doxygen.txt file and then generate a Doxygen folder, which will have our documentation. Okay, so let's go ahead and just start with that here. So I'm going to run doxygen -g to generate the file, and I usually just call it doxygen.txt. And that'll give me some configuration file here. So let's go ahead and edit that file here, doxygen.txt. And here it is here. So it'll give you this configuration file. And we can make it a little bit bigger here just so you can see what's going on here. And basically, this is our configuration. So it'll give us things like how to name our project. So let's go ahead and name our project something like Mike's Doxygen demonstration. And I'll go ahead and save that file. And let's go ahead and give this a run. And as far as running it, we just need to run Doxygen and then give it that doxygen.txt file here. And that will generate our documentation. Now, where is it going to actually put the documentation? Well, maybe we want to be a little bit careful here, because is it going to just put it in a folder for us? Where is it going to exactly do that? Well, we should probably change one little step here. So 2 fixes here, demonstration. Let's make sure that we make sure that that is spelled correctly. And we're going to change the output directory. Okay, so I can kind of grep for this here. And I'm just going to call this Doxygen docs like I previously had. And now let's go ahead and give this a try by just simply pressing enter. And let's see what happened here. Well, it looked like it ran quickly here. But if I go into my Doxygen docs folder, and then I have an HTML documentation and a LaTeX folder here, let's go ahead and open this up here. What is in my index? Well, let's see. I've got my documentation page set up here, Mike's Doxygen demonstration, documentation, but no source files. So again, we need to configure or otherwise set that up so that we know where our source files are, because again, that's going to be the input into Doxygen. Now, if we want here, again, the Getting Started guide does a nice job of otherwise telling you how to work with Doxygen. Now, the very first thing that we need is, again, some source code to look at. And the second thing that we need is to properly format some of our source code so that it, well, shows up in our project. So what does that mean here? Well, first and foremost, you need to document your code using special comments here. So here are some examples, and you simply put these type of comment above some function, class, struct, a module in D's case, or maybe at the top of the file. And that'll basically tell the Doxygen tool when we're running it to pick up that, whatever is following this or next to it is important and otherwise related. I use the / because in D and C++ it'll be the same thing. Again, most of these comments styles are going to be the same for all of the default supported languages, but again, that's the first idea. So once you have at least one source code documented in this style, and I'm going to use the / here, then again, Doxygen will be ready to pick things up here. And then the next thing that you need here, so let's go ahead and see running Doxygen here, is, well, we generated our default configuration file, and then we ran with config here. And again, these are the default languages that are supported. So Python, Fortran, a few that I didn't mention, PHP, we're using D today, C#, etc., Java, as you might imagine, Objective-C, all the popular languages here. We probably want to set some sort of output folder here. So let's kind of scroll down here. And we may or may not also want this LaTeX output, so I will turn that off as well here. So let's go ahead and continue to scroll on here. We've got documenting the code. So let's just go ahead and I'll show you a few of the interesting options here. So again, we set our output directory here, very, very important here. But now, since we didn't pick up anything, we need to find the input. So for us, that's going to be the source / file here. So again, let me give you a view of my project. Again, this is what it looks like. And again, my source code is where I have all of my .d files here. Okay, so you can see that pretty clearly. So that's what we want as our input here to have available. Now, beyond just looking at this folder here, we also want to make sure that we pick up the files or folders within if we have some subdirectories within our directories and more subdirectories. So that is short to say that we want to set the recursive option to yes. Okay. And again, this is going to make sure that we'll look for all of the .d, .cpp, or whatever language you're working with files here. Okay. So that'll be enough to get us started for now. Let's go ahead and rerun this command now. So every time you want to regenerate your documentation, you just use Doxygen and then the configuration file. And again, if you're using some sort of continuous integration tool or something, this is the only command that you need. Okay, so let's go ahead and run it. And now you'll notice we get a lot more output here. So we must have had some documentation here. So I'm just going to refresh our page here, which is, again, I'll show you for the last time, and then I'll just keep refreshing it. In the Doxygen docs folder, and then it'll be in HTML, and this is just the index file here. Okay, so that is what I'm opening up here. Okay, so let's go ahead and just leave that here for you. And now when I refresh, voila, I get some more cool stuff here. I get my namespaces, and it looks like I have some classes. So I can list them out here. I can click on some of these. Let's click on camera, for instance. And look, we can see some of the public member functions, some of the attributes, and so on, and again, some of the comments that I have here. Now, in order to make this a little bit more useful, I want to do a few things. I want to speed up our documentation by not using the LaTeX stuff, because we don't really need that. And it'd be really nice if I could click on this source code. And we could probably make this documentation a little bit more prettier here. So let's go ahead and add a few more features here by just changing our configuration. So what I'm going to go ahead and do here, the first is let's search for generate LaTeX. Okay, and I'm just going to say no, because I don't want to do that. It doesn't need to be part of my process. And that's why we were getting that LaTeX and HTML folder here. So what I'll do here, let's just go ahead and blow away our Doxygen docs file here. You can see I already had a Doxygen file at some point, so it'll make a backup, or as I'm editing this, which is kind of neat. But now let's rerun this command here. Just takes a moment. And then if I cd into Doxygen docs, I'll just have the HTML output. Okay, so that's great here. Now, in order to make things just a little bit more interesting too, let's go ahead and add similar to, well, let me go ahead and open up the Ogre page here, right? I really liked having this sidebar here. Okay, so you can notice the difference here that I don't have that sidebar. So how do I get that? Well, let's go ahead and search for, let's see, I believe it's going to be the generate tree view. Okay, and we might have to search around for this, but as you can see, the default is no. I'm going to say yes here, and that should do the trick for us here. Now you'll notice here it's got some other things like generate HTML must be set to yes here if we read through this. Let's go ahead and see if we can find that here. Looks like that's for a bunch of different options. So you can search generate HTML and then like a few spaces or something. And that is yes by default. Okay. But let's go back to where we were. Generate tree view. Okay, so that's the latest thing that we changed. And then again, we will just regenerate our documentation. And let's go ahead and refresh our page here. And it's gotten a lot more beautiful here. Okay, so now we can actually go through and look at our code here. So one thing that often happens when I'm looking through this code here, like let's say we find something interesting, like this looks like some sort of math type here. I'm scrolling through, and I say, oh, okay, there's a matrix rotation here or something, and I kind of scroll through. But I really want to see how this works here. So it'd be nice if I could click on it and see the source code. So let's go ahead and enable that feature here. So again, just in our configuration, let's go ahead and look for source browser. Okay. And let's go ahead and search here a little bit here. There it is. Source browser. I'm going to say yes. Okay. This is going to take a little bit more time for me to, look through my code. But again, if this is something that you want, for instance, if your project is open source or, this is a project that lives within your team internally, it is, again, going to be very helpful to just click and go to the source code. Okay, so let's go ahead and rerun our documentation generator. Let's now refresh this page here. And now what I can do here, if I scroll through here, and let's try to find an example source here. Oh, well, look what popped up here. Okay, so I have we were looking at rotation, but now it says this definition is at line 312 of this file here. Okay, so now I can click and I can actually see this source code here, which is super, super cool. Okay, and I could go to line 112, or if I actually just click on 312, it'll bring me right there. Okay, and again, looks like I have a little assertion here. That's why it was interesting. Okay, turns out this is part of like a homework assignment that I've made for my students. But anyways, you get the idea here, and then you can, kind of go back and forth, which is really, really nice here. But that is a lot of clicking if I do have to kind of go back and forth between, these different functions here. Like, I don't know if it's important yet, so I can add yet one more feature to make this just a little bit more interesting, where what I'm going to do here is search for inline sources. Let's put a few spaces here, and I'm going to put yes here. And again, this is the type of thing that, again, if you control your project and want people to see, or it's open source, again, this could be really, really nice. It'll make your documentation bigger, but then when we refresh this page here, we will now have our source code inlined here. Okay, which may or may not be what you want here, right? So it's not including the function name. That's why there's a little bit of a weird formatting here. but it is otherwise still providing all of the context for that function to, again, make it super, super quick so you can like see what exactly these functions are doing, how they're implemented. I actually really like this. As you can tell, this is a math library here, so I can check all my functions and kind of validate how they're working. For my math people, right, you can look at this and maybe tell something about if this is left or right-handed, or these types of things by just inspecting the code, and it's right here alongside the documentation, right? Because oftentimes if the code that I give, the comment here, which I have matrix is identity, and we can go ahead to this line here, you'll see that the actual line of the comment is omitted here from 223 to 225. So the actual source line comment is, again, that's just what's in the documentation. But anyways, we have just the source code context. So that's another kind of advantage. A nice thing about Doxygen is it's just showing you the actual source code. So there's no comments cluttering it up, and then you can go in the actual source files if you own them to see what else is going on. So all the triple comments, the stuff that gets embedded in the documentation are away. The double slashes, though, however, are preserved, because those provide the sort of why or what's going on within the code. So anyways, that's just some tips on how to document your code, and why to still use double slashes for your sort of inline comments, and then triple slashes for your documentation. Okay, so with that said, we're almost done here, but one thing that you might want to do here is say, what if I want to add some other pages? I want to add a page of examples or something. And I mean, first and foremost, this page is just empty here. So how do we fix that? This is described in the Doxygen documentation here itself. Let's see, documenting the code. Let's see here, under additional documentation, custom pages. So basically what you can do is you could just create a file, and I do these that are either, I usually put .docs as the extension here. And then if you do main, which is a special one for the main page, but you could write that whatever you want, and then page after it picks up here, you could just put in these examples here, okay? So I'm going to do this really quick in my project, and I'm just picking up everything from the source directory. So I'll just make this main .docs page here, and let's just paste it in as we saw here. Okay, so example from Mike here on how to do something. So you could write your tutorial, or how to build, or just pick up your markdown file. You can also use those. As you can see, this is sort of a markdown style, and this is just using the same comment style with the special slashes to pick up here. So anyways, let's go ahead and rerun this one more time, the final time here, and then I'll refresh this page, and you can see we're now picking up this custom page here. So we can add our custom pages here. I mean, I guess the other thing you could do is you could add source code files or something, but they don't really belong. You don't really want those in the source management. So anyways, this would be a way to, again, add some more cool stuff here. So there you have it, folks. We did a quick little example here on Doxygen here. And again, just to give you a sort of recap of what we did here, we generated this custom documentation file, and then we basically just run Doxygen, doxygen.txt, or whatever this file is called here. Now, in order to just give you a nice little summary of what we did here, I'm going to generate, again, just some default Doxygen page here. Okay, so maybe you have two styles here. So that is another option you have. Like, this is the one we used. This is the just like default configuration. And again, you might want one version that exposes the source and one version that doesn't. Again, there could be different reasons to have that. But for the purpose of this video, I just want to show you the diff between what we did and the different options that we configured. So you can run your diff tool here between our doxygen.txt. You'll get a bunch of stuff here, so let's grep through it and just search for where the diffs were. And basically, this is the idea, right? We changed the project name, we changed the output directory, where we were looking for the source. We want to look within that source directory through all the source files that could be in any subdirectories. We added the source browser and inlined our source code so we could see it in the context of our documentation, generated that nice tree view on the left side, and I got rid of LaTeX because I didn't need it. So anyways, folks, I'm going to go ahead and leave it here so you can take a snapshot or whatever. This is sort of your default documentation configuration for Doxygen. And let's go ahead and go back to Doxygen just to give them a shout out for building this cool tool. So definitely check out their other documentation on their page here. There's a lot of different things you can do, and obviously looking at some other documentation online to get inspiration, and then you can start asking questions about like, well, how did they get this cool header or change the logo or stuff. Again, that's all going to be in here as far as custom commands and customizing the output and putting in your own styling sheets and stuff, so you can spend some more time with that. But anyways, folks, hopefully that was a good enough introduction for you with Doxygen. Feel free to engage in the discussions below. Check out the other videos in this playlist on CS Essentials. And otherwise, I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one.